Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to take a look at the last quarter moon in the sign of Taurus, which came through early this morning. By the time that you're watching this, it's already passing by, but today is effectively the last quarter moon, and so we're going to talk about that last quarter moon in light of the fact that there are a number of things happening at the same time or right around the conclusion of this moon cycle that are really poignant. And it makes, I mean, you guys watch my channel, no, I don't. It's not every month that I sit and talk about a last quarter moon. Generally speaking, unless there's a lot of other things happening around a last quarter moon, there's almost always a bigger transit for me to be talking about. But in this case, at least from my perspective, this last quarter moon is very powerful. And so I want to talk about that and tell you why. There's 5 features of this last quarter moon that I want to draw your attention to and talk about broadly as we experience it today and as we push through the last week of the moon cycle before the next new moon, which also is a really interesting new moon. So this last quarter moon leads us into the next moon cycle, which it's a very interesting turn that's happening. So that's what we're going to look at today. Before we get into it, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Share your comments and tell us what you're thinking, or tell us how you're connecting with the astrology of the moment. I love hearing from you guys. You guys know that if you ever want to share a story, you can use the hashtag grabbed and then mention the transit and then tell us your story, or email it to us, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. If you're looking for a transcript of today's talk, you can always find one on the website, nightlightastrology.com. And when you go over to the website, be sure to check out all of my readings and courses. Remember, next week from the 14th of August through the 21st, we're going to be running a 1-week sale on my programs, kind of a flash sale that we're doing. So if you want to hop into some of the programs that start in January of 2024, or this November, we have a new program starting, you can pick up those classes at a discounted rate. So I'll mention more about that next week when the sale actually launches, and I'll take you over the website and show you how to take advantage of it. But just so you know, next week there'll be a big sale. Okay, any questions about anything that you find on the website? And the classes or readings I offer, email us, info@nightlightastrology.com. All right, let's take a look at the real-time clock, because I'm going to actually keep it up today because I'd like to be pointing out these things as we go. There are 5 features of this last quarter moon. You can see it right here. I've drawn it up, which happens today. It's about 5 in the morning Central Time, 6 in the morning Central Time, thereabouts. But the effects of this last quarter moon are present today and into tomorrow, and they also signify the way in which this cycle is now going to end, this moon cycle, which is fascinating because this moon cycle is taking place in the next new moon cycle, will take place in Leo, where Venus is currently retrograde. This last quarter moon also takes place in the sign of Taurus, which is one of the signs of Venus. So in other words, the moon cycle right now, as we're going through this last quarter moon and into the next cycle, are highlighting some very interesting turning points in the Venus retrograde cycle. And that's sort of what I want to talk about today. Anyway, there are 5 features of this last quarter moon that I think are worth paying attention to. And these are in no particular order, just things to be aware of. One is that this is a last quarter moon that is exalted in the sign of Taurus and conjoined Jupiter. So it's a very benefic last quarter moon. And if you're actually able to see it, depending on where you're at, it can be a little tricky to see a last quarter moon, but you should be able to see it in the evening sky after the sun sets. You can see it late at night, and you'll see it with Jupiter. It'll be really, really pretty beautiful when it comes up. And, I've seen when the moon is it depends on what shape the moon has, but when it's with Jupiter or Venus, it's really quite beautiful to see. Because those stars are, obviously the planets are very bright. So at any rate, you could certainly notice that there is a nice bright moon, exalted moon, conjoined with Jupiter, and that this is something that's going to be in the sky and visible for everyone. Now, more importantly, an exalted moon in Taurus, remember that the moon was said to be the ruler of fortune, which means the moon is kind of giving you a picture of how things are flowing, how generally the flow of events are going along. And as the moon goes, so goes everything. So if you pay attention to the aspects the moon is making during any given day, what sign the moon's in, whose sign the moon is in, and what planets the moon is aspecting and what phase the moon is in, you will have really an incredible map of how things are unfolding. The moon was one of the primary prognosticators of fate and fortune for ancient astrologers. It was sort of the planet of horary astrology, which was one of the most sort of in the moment predictive forms of astrology that ancient astrologers used. So when you see a last quarter moon that is exalted, and at the time that it's making the last quarter moon, it's also conjoining benefic Jupiter, and both in the sign of a benefic Venus. That's a special signature. It has just in general that there's an aura of auspiciousness around the last quarter moon, purely because of the highly benefic signature of a last quarter moon that is exalted and conjoined with Jupiter. So what would I say about that other than it's auspicious, it's beautiful to behold? I would say that there's a lot of support in the air. Taurus often brings things like luxury, stability, security, abundance, wealth, fertility, enjoyment, ease, pleasure, harmony. So those features are amplified a little bit at this last quarter moon. And frankly, because we're also dealing with a Venus retrograde right now, and this is happening in Venus's sign, you get the feeling that this is an important transitional moment for the Venus retrograde. The beginning of this cycle the beginning of Venus's cycle was challenging. As Venus was stationing, we had Mars opposite Saturn. As Venus was turning retrograde, we had the Sun opposite Pluto. We had a new moon cycle that kicked off with a new moon in Cancer opposite Pluto. So the last quarter moon is signifying it's really the release point of the lunar cycle. And I like that at this release point, Venus's sign is being highlighted in a very benefic way. And it points to the kind of letting go of the cycle that we're in and the turning toward the next cycle to come, which seems to indicate an auspicious turn for Venus, or there's a general aura of support and benevolence in the sky around this turning point. So I really like that, because I think I've been noticing in clients and the stories that you guys are sharing that this last lunar cycle was challenging in a lot of ways. So this is a good sign. Number 2 is that Jupiter is in a superior square to the Sun at the time of this last quarter moon. And so although the Sun's already passed over the square, Jupiter in a superior position can be very auspicious. It's like having a very supportive, benevolent person looking over you, or a very benevolent energy that's watching out for you, that is supportive and uplifting, generally speaking. So the basic thing here is that, again, just like the exalted moon with Jupiter has a general aura of auspiciousness, whenever Jupiter is in a superior square to the Sun, you tend to get these magnanimous, sort of warm, generous, regal, heart-centered, uplifting, ennobling qualities. It's very light, and there's a kind of inspired, hopeful, faithful, optimistic buoyancy that comes, in my experience, when you've got Jupiter in a superior square to the Sun. Sun's in its own sign in Leo. So I just feel like these two things together make this last quarter moon feel differently. Now, remember, last quarter moons typically indicate releasing and letting go, harvesting the fruits of the current cycle and letting go. And so what an auspicious letting go of the current cycle. I'm optimistic that means if we've been doing some hard work, that we're starting to gather the fruits of that labor and say, wow, look at what we've done. Things are ready to be integrated. We're ready to turn the page and move into maybe a more positive, supported, warm, integrated, kind of a feeling of having moved through some turbulent, some difficult places. The card that comes to my mind in the tarot is, I believe it's the 7 of Swords. Let me just see if I can bring it up. And I don't know, this image just kind of popped into my head, but maybe it's, maybe it is the Six of Swords. Yeah, it's the Six. I'm going to put it up on the screen so you can actually see it. There you can see it. Sorry, I guess my drawing is still up. But you can see it shows like a person that is paddling a boat, and there's swords in the boat. And the general meaning of the card is often associated with like a kind of like a bridge over troubled waters. Like you're leaving something difficult behind. There's a transition. You found some support and some ability to move past the turbulent time. You've collected some damage, but you're moving past it now. Personal transition or transition, change, rite of passage, releasing baggage. Those are the themes that I guess that website mentioned that I've also always been taught about the Six of Swords. But if you guys know more about that card, I'd love to hear from you guys as well. But my point is that when you look at the transit of the last quarter moon and you see that Jupiter is square to the sun and the moon is exalted, and that it's a releasing point in the midst of a Venus retrograde that is also the host of the last quarter moon, I just get this feeling of a bridge over troubled waters, and that we're finding a place of being ready to leave things behind and to pack sort of pack up the old stuff and let it go. Number 3, Venus, ruler of the moon, is also square to Uranus while the retrograde is taking place, or while the last quarter moon is taking place. So we talked about Venus squaring Uranus yesterday, but notice this. Venus retrograde squaring Uranus at the exact same time, you also get the feeling of liberation, that Venus, through her retrograde, is reaching a point of greater freedom or breakthrough. So you got the last quarter moon exalted with Jupiter, Jupiter square to the sun, and you get Venus, the ruler of the last quarter moon, hitting a liberating square to Uranus. Not only this, but then the next feature stands out to me. I'm going to take this forward just a little bit. So one of the things that's happening is as the dark moon is coming through, the balsamic moon, between the last quarter and the next new moon, Venus will also be reborn. So this last quarter moon pushing us through, letting go of the old cycle and pushing us toward the new, between the last quarter and the next new moon, we see Venus Cazimi, Venus conjoining the sun, going through the heart of the sun, and experiencing a moment of rebirth. This is happening just as the next new moon is about to form. Again, you get the feeling of a major transition around Venusian things. Now look at the house topic. We've done multiple horoscope sessions on the house topics of Leo. If that's your 4th house, it might be home, property, the past, family karma. If it's in the marriage house, it could be relationships. Could be relationships anyway with Venus, right? Maybe it's your career. And then what's interesting is not only is Venus about to be reborn between last quarter and the next new moon within her cycle, but then Venus and the sun will swap positions. This is really interesting. So right as Venus is reborn, then we get the sun going through, here I'll just point out what the new moon looks like. So the new moon in Leo that comes through, which starts the next cycle, happens as Venus and the sun are swapping positions. Now you have the new moon square Uranus, as Venus is now being reborn as the morning star very gradually, and she is now going into a square with Jupiter, where the sun was at the last quarter moon. So there's this this theme of breakthrough and revolution and a very uplifting, supportive element from Jupiter. It's very much highlighting the transition and transformation of Venus that's taking place. So if you look at this all together, we're talking about, between today and say August 16th on the next new moon, a very powerful transition for Venus. I've got to think that bodes well for the work that we're doing this Venus retrograde, that these details of the last quarter moon, when you put them all together, it's like a detective puzzle. It's like a bunch of clues the detective is trying to put together to solve the case. You get the feeling that we are reaching a really important and very positive looking moment of transformation for Venus, very uplifting. You might remember back earlier in the summer when I talked about this Venus retrograde cycle, I said, look, when the time you get into the cycle a little bit, things hit this very positive note. And my guess is that the early part of the Venus retrograde will be more difficult. The second part will be significantly lighter. And that's where we're heading now. So that's what makes this last quarter moon not just your average last quarter moon, because of what it implies, because of where things are heading between the releasing point of this last quarter and the next new moon. The Jupiter and exalted moon, the Jupiter square to the sun, Venus squaring Uranus, Venus about to be reborn through the Cazimi, and then the Venus-Sun swap of positions squaring Uranus and Jupiter in reverse order. I'm optimistic that some of the most exciting, uplifting, that part where you go, okay, it was all worth it. I think for this Venus retrograde cycle, that's where we're coming into in the week ahead. So this is my most optimistic take at any rate. I hope that you guys enjoyed following along with this. Please do leave your comments and reflections in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you guys and hear how you're tracking this transit as it goes along. Feel free to use the hashtag grabbed if you have a good story to share. We'd love to aggregate some of those and do a storytelling episode again soon. And yeah, I look forward to more as the week goes on. I think there's going to be a few more opportunities to continue unpacking some of the big changes that are at play right now. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope you guys are having a great day, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Bye, everyone.